And today we've secured the hostages, or rather, Hamas has released hostages, and I should say, all the living hostages from Gaza are back in Israel. The bodies are not, and there is some problems when it comes to the bodies that we'll talk about later. But yeah, 7 hostages were released at first, and then 13th, the rest were released after, and now all of them are back in Israel. So that's absolutely great to see. I'm sure many of you might have already seen a lot of videos about reuniting with them. There is one, I've seen a picture that I think was released only maybe half an hour ago with Noah Argamani and her boyfriend being finally reunited. So there's a lot of things, a lot of great things like that out there. So we'll talk a little bit about how this release went, what it means for the ceasefire itself, and of course, we also have a few more other. Okay, I'll mention it. Mr. Fafo is dead, and I don't mean dead as in, haha, he's faking death again. He really died. We'll might talk about that as well. And for those who don't know who he is, well, you'll find about it in just a bit. Uh, One more thing we had also, Trump had a speech in front of the Knesset, so we'll also talk about that. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today are Marco and Richard. And I'll go to you, Marco, with what do you make of the whole thing, the fact that they were released. And I'll just mention one thing. We're not gonna play the video, but there's a video of again, Hamas had to make a spectacle out of the release, and there is one video when one hostage kisses the head of one of the Hamas soldiers. And there is another video where right before that, one of the Hamas soldiers actually goes to him and like whispers something to him, whispers something to the other guys, and then they take the video with the kiss. So again, you could guess if he what it meant. Oh, one quick observation I would give: is it just me, or does Hamas only wear uniforms during these things? Like, I never see any other footage with like Hamas in uniforms besides when they do this release spectacles. But Marco, any thoughts on this, or just general?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, first of all, Hamas doesn't wear uniforms normally because every single Gaza is a Hamas member, really. Whether active members, whether people who actually use guns or people who protect the people who use guns. So it's very hard to tell whether a uniform makes Hamas terrorist or it's just the Gazan on cosplay, really. But yeah, I mean, we've seen this kind of stuff a number of times, and there's no doubt that Hamas, in pure breach of the Geneva Convention, always fight in civilian clothing. But of course, it's Israel the bad guy. Going back to today, it's a big day. It's an incredibly emotional day, and it's a happy day in a way because all the 20 living hostages have been released. Of course, there should be more living hostages released by Hamas, but that's where we are. 20 people have been released, returned to Israel, and frankly, I am against all these kind of videos that show the reunions because. It should be a very personal moment for them. It's a very, I mean, emotionally charged, but also a traumatic event for them. I mean, coming back from a hostage where they were mistreated and subjected to all sorts of psychological torture is something that really shouldn't be done on camera. And frankly, I believe that the hostages and the immediate family are the only one who are entitled to have some sort of emotional event. Everybody else around it, the crowd cheering is really inappropriate because you must remember that together with the 20 people, 2,000 terrorists have been released from Israeli prisons. So 63 or 65 life sentences, lots of hundreds of people affiliated to Fatah for the Palestinian Authority and others to Hamas. I mean, we're talking at least dozens of Yahya Sinwars being released back into Gaza. And Gaza, of course, crap hole that it is, this human sewer that it is, um, we are already seeing a struggle between Hamas fighters and previous other factions trying to take control of the area. Of course, Hamas will come on top because Hamas really has never been destroyed. Later on, we're going to talk about the bizarre speech that we've seen in the Knesset, and we'll discuss about a bit more about the Gaza situation. But yeah, I mean, glad that final hostages have been released, but by no means, we know by no means this is the end of it.
Yeah. For me, today's are actually a really hard day. I find a lot of conflicted emotion. I find a lot of things that run in different directions, pull me in different directions, and it depends how I choose to home in on it as to how I feel about any particular aspect of it. And that goes to show what the principles and the thinking is behind each of those emotions. Because you can empathize with the hostages, of course. And I agree with Marco. I don't like seeing the reunited scenes because I know what they really mean. Basically, they mean that a gun was raised to someone's head, it was cocked, and they threatened to shoot. Then that gun was lowered, and you're expected to show joy and gratitude. And the fact is that that gun should never have been raised to that person's head in the first place, and they should never have been under threat. So the relief and the joy of the reuniting comes with such baggage to do with the fact that it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And then obviously at the moment it's focused on that joy, but of course, as we've seen with previous releases of hostages or rescues of hostages, whichever it's been, you then in the coming days you begin to learn some of the experiences of those hostages, some of the horrendous psychological and physical trauma that they've been through in their time in captivity under the cosh of both Hamas and Palestinians both. Now, of course, that's being separated off from the joy, so you don't have to think about that bit for today. You're supposed to focus on the joy, but of course, that is also far more relevant, and that is the thing that can't be vanished from your mind, even when empathizing with the reuniting experience. And of course, it's not a reuniting experience of somebody lost at sea or rescued from a burning building or some natural disaster or something like that, where these were choices that the Palestinians and Hamas made, and therefore when they reverse those choices, albeit as part of this deal or whatever, that's not a reason to celebrate. They shouldn't have made the choice in the first place. I can't say that in many different ways, but I can only underline it. And of course, it's a grotesque spectacle when you see, the guy trying to be persuaded to kiss the hostages, the hostage taker's head for a video that propaganda. And of course, the fact that Hamas also, despite the fact they weren't supposed to do any of these, release ceremonies, also did these video calls, video calling the hostages' families with the hostage in advance of their being released. And I understand that at least one family chose not to take that call. And again, that's just sheer psychological exploitation. That's grotesque. That's hideous. That's representative of the kind of people Hamas are. And again, you can't erase that when you're focusing on the delight that those 20 people who should never have been taken are now back with their families, which of course is a good thing.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And I mean, something I've seen that like it's like really weird, and we've seen it pretty much since the ceasefire happened, right? And we've talked about it. When was the ceasefire officially? It was Thursday, right? And Friday was like officially, but Thursday we sort of knew it was happening. And sort of, I think already on Thursday it was like people saying, "Okay, there is no starvation in Gaza. Everything is okay. Everything is fine." Now I'm seeing in the news that apparently. Uh, Israel will be able to attend Eurovision. There is no vote to expel Israel out of it. And there is this thing of like this whole time we were being told that Israel is committing a genocide, Israel is trying to wipe out all of Palestinians, and what did they suddenly like decide not to? I mean, what state of mind do you have to be to believe that, right? Do you think the Nazis at some point would just be like, you know what? We do not actually want to commit genocide. Like it again makes no sense. And I wish I was. I mean, when it comes to the people on the pro-Palestinian side, those are not people guided by reason. So, of course, saying this doesn't mean much because it never was about genocide. It never was genocide in the first place. There never was starvation. It was always a political goal to basically achieve the ceasefire, to achieve the basically the defense of Hamas, to basically disallow Israel from finally doing what was necessary to do in Gaza to ensure a peaceful future um, for at least this small part of the broader Middle Eastern region. Um, and with that, we can go to Trump's speech. But Marco, any thoughts on? Yeah, I mean the fact that suddenly everything's okay.
Well, I mean, during the this period of, if you like, vacuum of power, you will see lots of images that disprove all the propaganda that Hamas and the people that were supporting Hamas, like Al Jazeera, the BBC, the British government, the French government, the Spanish government, most of the government, the Democrats. Most of these people were actually pretending were happening in order to force Israel to a surrender, which they unfortunately succeeded.
Yeah, and the fact that their agenda is no longer being pushed as hard is because that agenda has been achieved. Israel's conceded to ending the war, and we can debate whether that's premature or not, whether that's achieved its goals or not, as we have done on many of the shows we've been on lately. But that pressure is no longer required at the moment, so they can now just drop everything that they claimed was the case prior. And I think it exposes it for what it was, which was empty pressure anyway, empty in terms of content, empty in terms of truth. I do want to say a few words about the deceased hostages and the fact that obviously well, it would seem that Hamas have reneged on their part of the deal because although they said that they weren't in contact with didn't know the precise locations of some of the dead hostages, it wasn't supposed to be only returning four, which is the latest figure I've seen out of the 28. There was an impression that perhaps there wouldn't have been something like four out of the 28 that they could locate and return immediately, but that most would be returned. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that Hamas have deliberately reneged on their deal, or does it mean it's hard to know how to interpret that at the moment? And of course, some of these people will have died on October the 7th, have been murdered on October the 7th. Let's be honest about it, and some of them have been murdered in captivity since. And I think whether they're used as leverage for more concessions is also what looms over this, and the fact that Israelis in the past, and I find this very hard to get my head around, even more so than obviously with living hostages, the fact that that is used to get concessions out of Israel, and Israel does concede too readily, too often to that, is wrong, frankly. These people are no more, and we've got to face that. And I think zero should be added to what's already been conceded, whether they're returned or not. But obviously, pressure should be put on them to be returned for sure. And I think that's that's it's sickening that they're choosing to hang on to that. The families don't get closure. I understand all that, but still, the fact that living hostages are returned is the thing that is, well, it remained in abeyance, didn't it? Until the moment when you actually see the 20 back, you don't know that's going to happen. And I'm glad that it has happened.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it up later, but we can talk about it. So yeah, there's my understanding is there's 28 bodies of hostages in total that are supposed to be returned. The number I've seen was three, but that was a few hours ago, so it might be four. And now I'm seeing in Ynet breaking news that two more coffins of hostages were given to the Red Cross. So that would bring it to 6 out of 28. But something I've seen a few hours ago is the comment from the Hostages Families Forum calling for immediate suspension of all agreement implementation until every deceased individual is returned. Quote, Hamas violation of the agreement must be met with a very serious response from the government and the mediators. And I think even Netanyahu was saying that Hamas is breaching the ceasefire. And, I named the title that Israel should go in. I mean, we have the living hostages back. I understand that having the bodies of the dead hostages will give some closure, but I don't think anybody can stand behind the idea right now that Israel should hold back because or to recover the bodies of the hostages. I mean, Israel should absolutely go all in right now. Hamas is trying to recover as much as possible. We see them taking over the streets. We see them fighting with other even other clans that are anti-Hamas. It's trying to consolidate power. Now is a perfect time to basically go all in. You even have the I mean, you don't need an excuse. You don't need to say, "Well, they violated it, so I can go." This is a terrorist organization. You should straight up say, "Hey, we were never meant to actually hold to the ceasefire. We got our living hostages back. We are going back in because this needs to happen. Hamas needs to be taken care of, and we need to take over Gaza." So I think this absolutely should happen. I don't see any reason to basically do not go back. Somebody's saying that I'm talking about breaking the ceasefire, and that nobody has a problem with that. Hamas is not like this is not your friend that you make some agreement with. This is not even on international scale some friendly nation that you have an agreement with. This is a terrorist organization. You should absolutely lie to them. You should do whatever is necessary to recover your hostages or to recover some ground, to do whatever is necessary. I mean, we shouldn't have made the ceasefire in the end. Even if your goal from the start was simply to lie to get the hostages back and then go back in, I'm I'm not sure if it would be worth both the risk and the fact that now you have to go back into Gaza. But if it has an option, it should absolutely happen.
Absolutely. I mean, the moment that the 20 hostages were released, Israel should have just sent a wave of planes and flattened the rest of Gaza. Just whoever stays under the rubble stays under rubble. Because really, this so-called ceasefire, this negotiation were done with people holding hostages, living hostages, 20 living hostages out of the 250 that they took on October 7th, over 2 years ago. So these are not people you can reliably negotiate with. This is not a trade because they're pointing their head at Israel's head. They're pointing a gun at Israel's head, holding the hostages at the same time. So you don't negotiate with these people. These people, the only legitimate thing for a moral thing for Netanyahu to do right now would have been take the hostages as soon as they're safe, go all leather. Just get rid of Hamas once and for all. And if that means, the collateral damage of every single civilian in Gaza, well, it's a shame. They chose it. They chose the direction of travel. They chose to start a war. They chose to break the peace, the endless peace that was on October the 6th, before they decide to break into Israel and murder people. And by the way, recently they also released a document from Yahya Sinwar, where he was telling the people preparing for October the 7th, going to Israel, burn every single village, kill whoever you meet. He didn't say, oh, if it's a child, spare them. He said, kill everyone that you meet. Stamp on the head of the IDF soldier. Burn every single building. I mean, these are not people you can deal with ever.
Yeah. I think there's zero chance of that happening, however. And I think Marco would recognize that as well. So certainly in the wake of the content and the nature of Trump's speech to the Knesset, because this is all about, or the way this has been framed is all about Trump securing peace. And therefore, if people start bombing and fighting again, he will be accusing whoever's dropping the bombs, whether even if it is Israel, of violating the ceasefire and of destroying the peace that he's created, even if it's legitimate because Hamas have broken some element of the agreement, even if it's retaining all the dead hostages. I think the way this is morally confused and set up is going to make it impossible for Israel to do that. And that's the nature of conceding to evil, isn't it? That's the nature of what you've given up. You've given up the right to be morally certain and consistent throughout. You've certainly made it possible for someone to hold you to the evil side, an element of the evil side, which is letting evil go unpunished, letting justice go unserved, which is what will end up happening if the Hamas choose to hang on to those dead hostages.
And let's not forget that while the 20 families are celebrating, other families, the people that were held hostages, they're dead. They're not. They're never going to come back. At best, they can hope to get their bodies back, and that's not justice. And the fact that 63 people, 63 terrorists were with the life sentences are released into Hamas or wherever they're going, means that 63 families, because these life sentences, these 63 people, over 60 people with life sentences, they kill Jews, they kill other people. So the family of the victims of those 63 or whatever monsters are suffering now because justice has been denied to them. Just to mention one of them, one of the terrorists has been released, raped and killed a 13-year-old boy. I mean, that's the worst evil you could do. And this guy goes free. So the relatives and the parents of this kid that was killed years ago, they are suddenly denied justice. I mean, really?
And that's what makes this day again doubly hard. It is the fact that, as soon as you start reading any detail about any of the, 2000 were released from Palestinians were released from Israeli jails, and of course, a large number with those life sentences, and including the smaller number that Marco mentioned there as part of that. But all of that, when you read about the individual people being released and what they did, again, that's justice not being served. And how can you show the joy and delight and gratitude that involves that kind of a payment for it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be bad enough if we're talking about the families of the hostages that died either, died on October 7th or died afterwards, died in captivity. But yeah, the fact that the people who had their family members, or even your fellow countrymen, or even for us, I mean, the fact that innocent people have died and their killers are now going to be released. As you mentioned, some are released into Gaza, some are released into Egypt. I've seen is one of the countries. Some are released to the area A of the Palestinian territories, but some are released to East Jerusalem, meaning they have the unless there is some special sort of citizenship, or not citizenship, but sort of like a special mm, you know like special kind of permit they will have. If they are permanent residents of Jerusalem, it means they can travel wherever in Israel. So you have people who are in jail for that, or I assume these are probably the milder offenses, but still you have people who I mean, and this is the point I made on Saturday, that this is not some kind of like amnesty that you're giving to people because you're trying to be nice, or maybe it was some like minor offenses or something like that. It's people who have been who either were part of a terrorist organization or were doing something on the behalf of a terrorist organization, or generally we're doing something for the Palestinian cause, which is very akin to terrorism and simply wiping out of Israel, and have been released because of this terrorism. It's because somebody else committed more terrorism and kidnapped people on October 7th or did horrible things to Israelis. Now, because of that, you will be released. Again, this is another message to Palestinians to say, do you want to save your brothers and sisters from jail? Well, go and kill Jews and kidnap them, most importantly. This is a way to get them back.
And that's why what's happening now, the happy scenes we see, the release of the hostages, that, yeah, today is a happy day, but it means that the children born today, for example, by the time they turn 20, probably there's going to be another wave of another massive attack on Israel, and more people will be released because more hostages will be taken. So this is a vicious cycle that is not interrupted, it's actually enforced. You've shown the Palestinians, you've shown the Hamas, you've shown all the other terror groups that by taking the hostage on October the 7th, they gain the freedom of their comrades, the terrorist comrades, 2,000 of them. And this is not how to deter terrorism. Terrorism, violence against somebody, the initiation force on somebody else, is only deterred, eliminated when you get rid of the threat, when the people who have any intention of committing any violence on you know that you will retaliate, and they, if you show strength against any threat, the people who pose the threat himself will think twice before attacking you. But this is exactly the opposite. You're showing weakness, and these people thrive on weakness. They will do it again, because they even suggested they will do it.
And I think that's what's notable about this is that the if you compare what you're actually seeing on these reuniting scenes, because they look the same as somebody being reunited who's been dug out of the rubble after an earthquake, for example, or rescued from a mining accident, or those cave boys, in Thailand who were trapped for days and weeks on end. When you see that there is no bad guy that caused them to be trapped in those cases. So the rescue and the delight of them being reunited with their families is genuine. Nobody was conceded to or paid off who caused it in order for them to be released. But that massive context drop that allows you to fix totally on the emotion and to drop all of the reason and the context and the circumstances and the morality and the ideology of those that caused it in order to just focus on the non-essential of the reuniting. That is the problem here. And it's very hard to get that over, because you genuinely do feel pleasure and delight and happiness that anyone is reunited who shouldn't be apart. But of course, it's within the wider context.
Now, let's actually look at, so Trump is still in Israel, I assume. He had a speech in front of the Knesset. I'm not sure what everything we want to bring up, because there were a lot of things, but sort of the one thing that stood out, or at least was the title of one of the articles I've read, was the quote. This is from Trump in the Knesset. This was not only the end of the war, but of the age of terrorism and of the beginning of the age of peace and of God. And I mean, I'll go to you guys. Something I've really surprised me about big parts of this speech is I think at some point he also talked about how basically Palestinians now have a chance to actually build something instead of simply going after the Jews, or paraphrasing a bit. Then he talked about how Iran is the major exporter of terrorism or major supporter of terrorism. And something that really surprised me, like, it seems like he knows what's going on, yet he is probably one of the most, because I know that Netanyahu knows what he's doing. He is smart enough and even like knowledgeable enough when it comes to the proper way to wage war, that I know he knows what he's doing is wrong. He's with many things he said so himself in the past, and is simply doing that with Trump's. But he would never, like Netanyahu plays into not understanding what's going on. He says, "Oh, we want to, free Palestinians from Hamas." Like he plays into not knowing. With Trump, he sort of like calls out the proper thing that is like being done wrong, and he does the other thing, like calling Palestinians that don't hate Jews, try to actually build something, calling Iran the major exporter of terrorism, and then goes that this is the end of the age of terrorism. I mean, Marco,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So you talked about eternal peace. I mean, eternity is a bloody long time, mate. I wouldn't. To me, this is gonna be the speech that age the worst in the worst way than any other speech. This within a week is going to be a the most redundant speech ever made. But also, to be honest, if you're familiar with those films and programs where you have the parallel universe, felt to me like this was a speech done on Earth 13 or something, where the poison ideology of Islam has been challenged and defeated, and it's no longer there to present a threat to anyone on the planet. And suddenly everybody's slapping their back, yeah, we done well done us. It was like, what are you talking about? As you speak, Hamas is taking back control of Gaza. You got factions that they were fighting Hamas when Hamas looked like it was losing. And now that they're suffering the consequences of trying and defeat Hamas. This is bizarre. You still have Iran, who's still returning, trying to return the capability of missiles, ballistic missiles, and uranium enrichment that they had before. They haven't given up. It's not like they're waiting for Trump to strike a deal with them. They are currently, right now, working and restoring their capability. Why? In order to attack Israel. It's just absolutely bizarre that everybody in the Knesset were standing up, clapping at each other. Oh, this guy, yeah, big up for this guy. It's like, what are you on? I mean, I've never had drugs before, but please give me some of the stuff that they've been smoking, because honestly, it's just so surreal. It's like they've been watching a different war. And they kept talking about Israel winning. Winning what?
And when they were talking, I think Trump even mentioned at one point doing a peace deal with Iran, or threw in the possibility as a phrase. That was one of the moments that got one of the least. There's a mere smattering of slightly polite clapping from like four people in the Knesset, which is, more than even that deserves, frankly. Because I mean, to announce it is
Probably from the Arab parties.
possibly.
Woo!
Yeah, yeah. You want to investigate those people and find out what their background is. Yeah, if you clap that moment. But yeah, I mean, to call it the end of the age of terrorism, and yeah, what are you going to do when it isn't? Because you need to be ready for that, don't you? Because when it isn't next week, you could argue it's already today, couldn't you? On the basis of the fact that the dead hostages that were promised to be released as part of the deal haven't been, but yet there will be more terrorism. There will be more Islamist-inspired terrorism, Islamist-acted terrorism, and that'll be on the streets of Europe as well as in the region of the Middle East. And are you going to still call it the end of the age of terrorism then? Or are you going to call it by its name then? Will that be a change to the state of peace, eternal peace that you're talking about? Or will it be part of the eternal peace that you're talking about, an acceptance permanently that some terrorism doesn't count as terrorism, it counts as peace?
Yeah, a real peace in our time moment. And I mean, you mentioned the clapping, and this is something I've never actually read The Emperor Has No Clothes, but so many moments feel like that, because there is no way people in the Knesset don't understand what's really going on, don't understand that this is not over. This might, like, the war might still continue. This might not be a ceasefire. And even if ceasefire does indeed sort of go through, and I think we might have lost Marco and Richard, but even if the ceasefire does indeed sort of hold up, and even when we talk about ceasefire holding up, it means just a cessation of violence for some time until Hamas decides to do something again. Um, so I mean, on some level, maybe people are truly oblivious to what's going on. I mean, even the fact that October 7 happened, right? From what we know about both the ADF and sort of like the government, there really does seem, there really did seem before that some sort of ignorance about Hamas, some sort of not viewing Hamas as a threat. Because we've seen the difference between the way Israel was prepared for Hezbollah, the way they like wiped the floor with Hezbollah, and the way they were prepared for Hamas. Like it really did seem. Alrito in the chat says they have no idea, Daniel, but it's truly hard for me to like understand it. Like that people are so oblivious, or I mean, what was the Ayn Rand's quote? The hardest thing to convince someone of is something they refuse to see. So maybe it is not ignorance. It's simply people are trying to basically lie to themselves. People are trying to convince themselves that, yeah, this piece will hold up and this piece will be good. And if it doesn't happen, then we will act surprised. We will act as nobody could see that coming. Because we can see that coming. We can see it coming that Hamas will attack again, or some other terrorist organization that replaces Hamas, or even if somehow it wouldn't be a Palestinian, or it wouldn't be a terrorist organization in charge of Hamas. Palestinian people themselves want violence against Israelis. So even if there is some sort of, quote, civil administration, which there was in Gaza, right? Like Palestinian Authority was in charge of Gaza, and then Hamas simply took over uh, and slaughtered a bunch of people affiliated with Fatah. Um, so again, like this will happen again, but yeah, it really does seem that people are so like knowingly try to blind themselves to basically not encounter or to not have to deal with reality on the ground. And I think we have Marco and Richard returning to us. So I'll just basically I talked about how I cannot understand that people don't see what's happening, but I mentioned the Ayn Rand's quote, right? The hardest thing to explain is something people refuse to see, and this might be some sort of cope. I mean, uh, if you some sort of like defense mechanism almost, right? Because if you truly understand that Hamas and Palestinian people themselves are as evil, do simply want to wipe out all of Israel, do not have any desire to civilization, well, if you believe in all of that, you've made a terrible deal. You've compromised with evil to such an extent that if you are sort of like an elected official, I don't think you can even like stay, stay as elected official. Like if you fully realize what you did, you pretty much would have to resign. Like there is no way you could ever see yourself in any position of power from now on. Marco, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, that's not something that we can just tackle in
Yeah.
10 minutes or whatever. But if if Netanyahu had the moral backbone uh, and understood exactly what the situation is, if they didn't believe, if politicians didn't believe that the way to go is appeasement, uh, it- using altruism as your background, that they would go in strongly. They wouldn't worry about what the public opinion say about any move that Israel makes in self-defense. If they realize that the only moral way is the solution that is actually also the practical way, they would have flattened Gaza years ago. Unfortunately, until altruism until putting somebody else's values ahead of your own is the main philosophy and morality that people in the world use, you will never get out of this kind of catch-22 situation because altruism requires sacrifice and sacrifice requires more sacrifice. You cannot reach an end. It's a it's a circle. You will never get out of it until you decide, hang on a second, these are the values of Israel, democracy and value for life. The Palestinians hate life, hate the Jews, so the Palestinians want to destroy Israel. Therefore, the Palestinians have to be destroyed. And there is no agreement, no midway. It's exactly black and white. Unfortunately, people think that black and white is wrong because they are trained into thinking everything is gray. They never take a side because they're always afraid of not being the correct one. But again, read Ayn Rand. You'll understand that morality is actually as an objective based in reality. There is a reason why things can reach a conclusion. There is a morality that's based on the fact of life, on the fact of reality. And you can actually find the solutions of any situation by applying the proper principles. But the proper principles have to be reached using logic, observing fact, and never pretending that reality is what it is not. And that's part of the issue here.
I think two things that struck me particularly out of Trump's speech to the Knesset. One was one thing he didn't mention, and one was one thing that he did mention. Let's deal with the second first, in a sense, the thing he did mention, because he referred to Iran, and he referred to, obviously, taking some deserved credit for the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran and working together with Israel to achieve that. He also pointed out, which is, I think, speaks to your point earlier, Daniel, about the fact that he does identify certain things. But he does point out that this deal wouldn't have happened, and a lot of the other Arab members wouldn't have been, willing to come to the table at all, were it not for the fact that they had actually shown this force, which is proof that this force was needed in order for that to occur. But of course, none of them would recognize that. And of course, many of those are only coming to the table. Why? Well, partly because they want to protect Iran from further bombing, or because they want to allow Iran the room to restore itself, or they don't want to be bombed themselves, even though they actually share much of the same ideology as Iran when it comes to the Jews and to Israel. So a lot of that is much more mixed. And then there's the fact that you conceal that behind the fact that Israel won. So you declare Israel won, which is a nice, happy feeling that everybody can clap themselves on the back for. And that allows you to not focus on the fact, and this is the bit he didn't refer to, the other bit that I was going to point out, where he doesn't refer, obviously, to the thousands of Palestinians released from jail and those that took place in, some famous lynchings of Jews in the past and murders and rapes and on all the rest of it. Some of whom gained notoriety within prison for their Jew killing, for the nature of their sentences, and for parading the fact, that they were the murderers of Jews. They've gained notoriety and a following, to put it frankly, within Palestinian circles and their supporters. So, of course, that is not referred to. That's all concealed behind the warm, cuddly feeling of you won the war, so you don't need to worry about people who were against you in the past, even though those very same people will be those that constitute the next wave or inspire the next wave.
And of course, somebody else that wasn't mentioned was the European leaders, the very people who tried to effectively cause more hassle by recognizing the terrorist state of Palestine, which really didn't do anything, to help Israel fighting back these Islamic monsters. In fact, emboldened them. But it's quite nice how those rancid bags of fat people like Starmer or Macron or Pedro Sanchez are actually now trying to go to the conference in Egypt, pretending to be among the victorious people, among the people who brought this kind of understanding, brought the ceasefire. They all want to be seen in front of the Islamist or Islamic electorate in their own country to have contributed to what the murderous crowds have been chanting in the streets for 2 years. You know, death to Israel, from the river to the sea and all this kind of crap. They want to be seen. Look at us, we delivered what we promised you. It's just such a spineless, pitiful showing that the Western leaders are doing. It's just sickening.
Yeah, I think even Erdogan has said something about sort of I helped this peace, and it's like, who are you? What role did you play? Uh, we have a super chat from Apollo, thank you so much. A super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much. Super chat, or rather a member chat from Robert, thank you so much. He has been a member for 41 months. He says, has this experience, the events of the last 2 years, been enough of a teachable moment to create a lasting change in the region? If so, how much? I don't think so. I don't think like next week, I think will still depend, like what happens in the next week or so will still shape this very much so, the way the Middle East will go. But again, a crisis or a war or anything in that regard doesn't teach you anything. It simply is a it simply will reflect what you have already been taught or what you have already taught yourself, right? Like, what did we learn from the COVID situation? Absolutely nothing. But we've learned how statist all the countries are going to go if simply presented with a choice and a justified excuse. So I think in a similar way, or if the Ukraine war ever ends, right? Will we learn that to not appease Russia, to not trade with Russia, to not appease this kind of evil? Well, we are still trading with them. So even right now, we have not really learned this. And I think it will be similar with Hamas and Palestinians, as unfortunate as it is. I mean, it will might be what do you call that? Like an initiator for some people willing to think. And I think it did wake up some people, but definitely didn't awaken cultural change, or at least yet. But maybe you guys have different thoughts.
Well, I mean, what's a crisis? It's crisis is just an event that occurs because there is lack of understanding, lack of a moral direction, and lack use of principles. When you don't stand for anything, when you don't use principles to direct your actions, of course you're going to have a crisis, a endless serious crisis, a crisis after the next, because as we've seen, most of our politicians are just using pragmatism. There is something happening now, or let's use this fix. Something else happens, or let's use this fix. If we had more clarity when Putin, for example, invaded Crimea, if we slapped on him so many sanctions that would have crippled him for the next few years, he wouldn't have attacked Ukraine after that. What happens instead? We let him take Crimea. We let him amass lots of soldiers and equipment on the border with Ukraine, and we let him invade because nobody had the backbone, the moral backbone to say, you step out of you cross the border and you're gonna be wiped out effectively. And it's a worry because Xi Jinping is looking. Xi Jinping is learning, and he's gonna apply these kind of lessons when he invades Taiwan, which is to me now quite obvious. He's gonna do it, and then he's gonna try and find a deal with Donald Trump.
And I think, in answer to Robert's point, where are the people saying we were wrong? We shouldn't have attacked the Jews. We do recognize the state of Israel. I mean, Trump is making the point that is valid, that we would all agree with, which is that doing something productive, going for progress, trying to make the best potential of the place where you are and your life is what is now a potentiality, but it's only a potentiality if you relinquish all the other stuff that prevented you from doing that in the first place, and made that impossible for you to do in the first place because you've chosen all the destruction and the nihilism and the death as your main values, which is what the Palestinians had chosen so far, and there's no sense that they've shifted from one to the other by relinquishing what they have been holding. But of course, time will tell. Maybe. I mean, I'm not super hopeful. I've got to be honest, but it's possible if enough see the benefits, and if enough start to choose to build. I think it's going to depend a lot on who is picked to lead the reconstruction and that kind of stuff. But it's also going to depend on what happens with Hamas and the various militias within the region, and it's also going to depend on the Palestinian people themselves and whether they want the river to the sea. And all they've learned from this experience is we need to be more prepared. Will be when we instigate another October the 7th. We need to be more prepared with our social media onslaught that follows an attack of the nature of October the 7th if we're going to crush the Jews and annihilate them from the face of the earth. That might be the lesson they draw.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that is enough for a whole episode because I'm trying to think of the past when we saw these like great shifts of like the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the foundation of the United States, Industrial Revolution, pretty much anything. It's not like there was like an event then inspired this. No, it was a cultural shift of the whole, pretty much of the whole people, of the whole, especially sort of the philosophy, general philosophy going around the world that inspired these changes. So yeah, that's why I don't think there will be there is like one event that will. I mean, like I said, it might inspire individual people, but generally as a culture. Well, we have one more super chat from Robert. Thank you so much. He says, "No, the war." In brackets, whatever it's called, does the present war even have a name? I don't think it usually has like a name of the operation, but I don't think we have any Israeli name for this operation. So generally just Gaza war. I think we only have what is the specifically for the Gaza operation? There is Gideon chariots. So we have like names for operations, but not for the whole war. Maybe it will come after. He continues. It hasn't changed everything, but has it changed anything? Will it lead culturally to a net change for the good, however small? So I guess that's a very similar question. I mean, small change. I mean, like I said, I think individuals who see the problems. Again, it's any crisis is a sort of good way to sort of reveal the cracks in the system for individuals willing to look at them. But if somebody again refuses to look at anything, then yeah, there's nothing you can do. Like similar with Palestinians. Like, will Palestinians learn anything differently? No, they. If you look at the lessons Palestinians have learned, is that terrorism works, kidnapping works, we will get rewarded always for it. So definitely won't see any cultural change in Palestinian culture. And even when it comes to Israelis, right? They've also been pretty much told that. I mean, it's sort of like a brick is like a recursive loop between the government and the people, right? It's the people are pushing for a ceasefire, and the leadership is not strong enough to actually push for the moral change. You have no Churchill willing to say what it is, and then the people being able to support that sort of leadership. So it is sort of like a recursive thing, unless somebody is willing to call it out. Anything to say on that?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we've seen a change. We've seen suddenly how many snakes in the grass are in the West. How many people who pretended to be civilized are actually not civilized. How many people support terrorism here in Britain, in the United States, all over the so-called civilized world. And because now we've seen, we cannot unseen. If people choose to believe that we haven't got a problem here in the West, the same problem that effectively Israel has, and it is Islamism. We keep appeasing this kind of culture under the guise of multiculturalism, pretending that every culture is as valid as the next. Well, no, we've seen it now that supporting terrorism, supporting the barbaric events of October the 7th is not, it's got nothing to do with our values. We stand for life, we stand for proper love of life, against the people who love death. Against, I mean, we are talking about people whose ideology is being dead is more important than living this life. This life is just a stepping stone for my real life when I'm dead. So they're quite happy to be martyred. That's why Hamas is already telling its population, you see, your sacrifice was worth. Now, 2,000 terrorists are back. We forced Israel to stop shooting at us. I mean, that's a victory under any other name. And the problem is that if you don't stand up to this kind of ideology, if we don't fight back these stupid ideas, these treacherous, evil ideas, our values will be trampled, will be destroyed, will be annihilated by the monsters. I don't see anyone standing up for it. I don't see anyone apart from ourselves, reminding people read Ayn Rand, see why your life is the most important thing, see why you have to make the best of it. Nobody else makes the case.
And I think one thing that's also been learned is how the supposed allies of a nation can be used to defeat it. I mean, the fact that the Ayatollah is still alive is because of the Allies' pressure on Israel to stop ahead of finishing that job in Iran. And of course, some of those voices come from within Israel itself, and some of them come from America and from the European allies. But either way, it's understanding where people are actually working against you rather than with you, where they're not sharing your morality, but they're actually trying to undo it, where they're trying to destroy the moral clarity you hold by the nature of compromise with evil, which means that you no longer have that moral clarity if you concede to that compromise. That's one of the sad lessons we've been learned, and of course, that's been learned all over the place in terms of also in terms of how universities or the streets of Western cities are policed, for example. It's been learned there too.
Well, I had a few more things to bring up, but I think we can leave it for tomorrow. So with that, I guess we sort of gave last words, but anything to add, Marco, and where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I suppose when people call for peace, well, peace cannot be at any cost. Peace as a price, if you do not understand where morality comes from. If you don't understand where morality comes from, if you don't understand that altruism will never produce peace, well, then you can call for peace as much as you like, but it's never going to happen. Peace comes from the fact that you remove a threat if it's there. And the fact that you are willing to do that, and the fact that anyone wanting to attack you knows that, that's what keeps the peace. The peace is just a result of your moral backbone, the result of you standing for your values, and anyone who wants to attack you knowing that you will defend yourself.
Yeah, and we're 2 years on from October the 7th, and those 20 hostages are now returned with their families. That's to be celebrated for sure in terms of the fact they are home, despite everything I said earlier in the show, and with those caveats, of course. I think what happens from here, it's a little bit foggy. It's a little bit uncertain. We've got to take each day as it comes and each week as it comes. There is the kind of opportunities that are spoken by even the likes of Trump, even in the Knesset. There's the possibility of people choosing a different path, of nations coming together to choose progress and productivity over, the destruction of a neighbor. And I think, will we see that through the expansion of the Abraham Accords? Despite the difficulties that those have and the history that they have, will we see more nations coming together? Will the Middle East take a new direction? I mean, it's too early to say any of that, and certainly, obviously, far too early to declare eternal peace or the end of the age of terrorism, which is frankly risible.
Yeah, so Bonnie in the chat is asking, no Trump speech video? Oh God, no. I mean, we've commented on the quotes that we brought up. We do not have to listen. I mean, we might still bring it up in the upcoming week. Again, this week will probably be very breaking news or sort of what happened today. So depending on that, we might cover some of the earlier stories. Like I mentioned, we didn't get to FAFO, and we didn't get a little bit more into how Hamas is taking over Gaza, but we did talk about it. So, again, we are here every single day, 5:30 UK time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So you can always check in. Before we part our way, something a bit more positive that is coming up is the Irreplaceable Spark Conference in just how many, like 11 days? Basically next weekend, October 25th, 26th, Irreplaceable Spark Conference in Orange County, California. Will be conference where you'll be able to listen to a lot of objectivists that have used the philosophy to succeed in their personal and professional lives. You'll be able to hear a lot of interesting and unique perspectives that you've never been able to hear before. So you still have a time to sign in. So simply go to objectivism.co.uk and purchase your tickets now. With that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective. Until then, bye bye.